Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about social constructivist approaches to education, structuring small group work. Objectives of this module are to understand how small group work can be structured, to understand how groups should be composed, to determine the various team building skills, to know about the structuring of small groups. Structuring small group works. Group works can have many benefits for students. It requires careful planning on the teacher's part. However, when students' work are structured as per in small groups, teachers have to make decisions about how to compose the group, build team skills and structure group interactions. Small group work can range from short informal exercises to formalized problem sets that make up the majority of class. Contrary to popular belief, instructors can incorporate small group work into large lectures as well as seminars and discussion sections. Working in small group gives students a chance to practice the higher order thinking skills that instructors love to teach. Students who do small group work generally learn more of the material and retain their knowledge longer than students who do not. Here are some examples of small group aspects that range from informal to formal and that works well with a variety of class sizes. Harmonizing personality. The personality of a group leader plays a big factor on how the team performs. It is imperative for leaders to have a positive and effective personality to gain respect among their members. Training on how to work together. A group must know how to work together in order to be productive and successful. If a group can work together, they will be able to raise and resolve issues that are standing in the way of accomplishing the goal. Working together may not come easy at first, but with proper training, the group will be able to adapt quickly. The training may include the instructions on how to communicate better, manage conflict, or understand the skills and talents that everyone brings to the table. Support within the group. Another important aspect for group building is supportiveness. Supportiveness is the aspiration to help others succeed. Making effective use of resources. Effectively using resources is essential in the success of group building. Resources are essential to group building and they must be used wisely and efficiently. Communication between group members and leaders. A leader with good communication skills must be able to speak the truth and deal with problems openly. Their goal should be to promote listening, to understand different viewpoints and to work towards a resolution. Composing the group. Teachers often ask how they should assign students in small groups in their class. The cooperative learning approaches generally recommend heterogeneous groups with diversity in ability, ethnic background, socioeconomic status and gender. The reasoning behind heterogeneous grouping is that it maximizes opportunities for peer tutoring and support, improves cross-gender and cross-ethnic relations and ensures that each group has at least one student who can do the work. Heterogeneous ability. One of the main reasons for using heterogeneous ability groups is that they benefit low ability students who can learn from higher ability students. However, some critics argue that such heterogeneous groupings hold back high ability students. In most studies, though, high achieving students perform equally well on achievement test after working in heterogeneous groups or homogeneous groups. In heterogeneous groups, high ability students often assume the role of a teacher and explain concepts to other students. In homogeneous groups, high ability students are less likely to assume this teaching role. One problem with heterogeneous group is that when high ability, low ability and medium ability students are included, the medium ability students get left out to some extent. High ability and low ability students form teacher-student relationships, excluding the medium ability students from the group interaction. Medium ability students might perform better in group where most of all of the students have medium abilities. Ethnic, socioeconomic and gender heterogeneity. One of the initial reasons that cooperative learning groups were formed was to improve interpersonal relationship among students from different ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. The hope was that interaction under conditions of equal status in cooperative groups would reduce prejudice. However, getting students to interact on the basis of equal status has been more difficult than initially envisioned. When forming ethnically and socio-economically heterogeneous groups, it is important to pay attention to a group's composition. One recommendation is to not make the composition too obvious. Thus, teacher might vary different social characteristics, ethnicity, socioeconomic status and gender simultaneously, such as grouping together a middle income student, a student from low income family and so on. Another recommendation is to avoid forming groups that have only one minority student if at all possible. This avoids calling attention to the student's solo status. Group composition. Group composition affects many aspects of a group project, such as how efficiently group members work together and how much relevant knowledge they can share. When deciding how to compose groups for a project, teachers should decide how to configure groups' identity, characteristics of group members relevant to the project's learning objectives, decide who has the responsibility for selecting group members, develop a contingency plan in case group membership changes during the project. Decide how to configure groups. There are two main factors to consider when configuring groups. Size. Small groups tend to work efficiently because it is easier to coordinate efforts and schedule among fewer people. However, although large groups have higher coordination cost, they can theoretically accomplish larger and more complex projects. Roles. Some projects require that each group member plays a specialized role to mimic workplace environment. Some instructors specify the roles that must be represented in every group and then allow students to join groups based on their strengths. Identify relevant characteristics of group members. The characteristics of group members can influence how effectively students achieve the learning objectives of the project. There is no single set of relevant characteristics for group members because it depends on course, goals, students and the nature of the project. Let us see some of the common characteristics to consider when composing groups. Prior knowledge, previous experiences and skills. If the teacher wants to structure groups to distribute particular types of knowledge across groups, teacher can assess students' prior knowledge or ask them to complete a skill inventory. In some interdisciplinary courses, instructors use a student's major as a proxy for prior knowledge. Keeping in mind too that skills relevant to the group projects may be interpersonal as well as discipline based. Motivation. Students have different levels of motivation within a course. Some prioritize the work for a project in order to excel, some are content to receive the minimum passing grade, some are taking the course because of genuine interest, and some are taking the course to satisfy a requirement. Mixing students with different motivations within a group can cause tension and problems. To counter this, some instructors group students by motivation. Diversity of perspectives. If one of the project's learning objectives is to become familiar with multiple perspectives, you can compose diverse groups. We often think about diversity in terms of gender, culture, race or ethnicity and native language. But it might also consider the relevance of socioeconomic, political, geographic and other differences to the project's learning objectives. However, it is important to make sure that there is critical mass in every group so that lone members of a particular social category, example race or gender, do not find themselves isolated in a group. Students' familiarity with each other. Students who have worked together effectively in group before may be more likely to work together effectively again. Before students are placed in groups, you can ask students if they have worked effectively with classmates on previous group projects. If the teacher wants students to focus more on the product than on the process of the group work, this may be relevant characteristic. Similarly, if teacher is assigning another group project later in this course or expects to in a future course that the student may enroll in, it may be useful to group students in a way that meets the present project's learning objective and prepares students to work together again in the future. Personality. Students' tendencies to act as extroverts or introverts are relevant to the role that may be defined formally or developed informally. If one of teacher's course goal is to help students develop the skills required for different roles, then considering assigning or encouraging students to choose roles in which they have less experience or proficiency will be better. Decide who has the responsibility for selecting group members. Teachers also needs to decide who has the responsibility for selecting group members. This responsibility can be viewed as a continuum between instructor or teacher selected groups and student selected groups. Students tend to like choosing their own group members, but they often form groups that are homogeneous. However, this homogeneity may not support the learning objective of the project. If the instructor selects group members without students' input, the instructor may be able to choose group that serves the project's learning objectives but not anticipate interpersonal issues among group members. Develop a contingency plan for changes in group membership. Sometimes the number and characteristics of the students enrolled in the course may change and no longer allow for the group composition the teacher had planned for or that she or he and or the students had decided on. Because students may withdraw from the course or teacher may allow groups to dismiss non-contributing members, then teachers should develop a contingency plan, in this case group membership changes during the project. Considering in advance what alternative work is feasible for groups when a member withdraws from the course, as well as for individual students who have been dismissed from their groups. Building skills. Good cooperative learning in the classroom requires that time be spent on team building skills. This involves thinking about how to start team building at the beginning of the school year, helping students becoming better listener, giving students practice and contributing to a team product, getting students to discuss the value of a team leader, and working with team leaders to help them deal with problem situations. Strategies for developing students' team building skills. Some guidelines for helping students develop team building skills are provided by Aronson and Pitno 1997. They are as follows. Do not begin the year with cooperative learning on a difficult task. Teachers report that academic cooperative learning often works best when students have previously worked together on team building exercises. A short period each day for several weeks is usually adequate for team building. Many students have not had much experience in working in cooperative groups, so having them engage in team building exercises help them to learn how to be more effectively interact with each other before they begin trying to work on a difficult group project. Do team building at the level of the cooperative groups, that is 2 to 6 students, rather than at the level of the entire class. Some students on the team will be more assertive, others will be more passive. The team building goal is to give all members some experience in being valuable team members, as well as to get them to learn that being cooperative works more effectively than being competitive. In team building, work with students to help them become better listeners. Ask students to introduce themselves by name all at the same time to help them see that they have to take turns and listen to each other instead of hogging a conversation. Teachers also can ask students to come up with behavioral descriptions of how they can show others that they are listening. These might include looking directly at the speaker, rephrasing what he just said, summarizing his or her statement, and so on. Give students some practice in contributing to a common product as part of team building. Ask each student to participate in drawing a group picture or writing a story about the group by passing paper and pen for students to student. Each student's task is to add something to the picture or story as it circulates several times through the team. When the picture or story is finished, discuss each student's contribution to the team. Students will sense that the product is not complete unless each member's contribution is recognized. During team building, teacher may want to discuss the value of having a group leader. Teacher can ask students to discuss the specific ways a leader should function to maximize the group's performance. Their brainstorming might come up with such characteristics as helps get the group organize, keeps the group on task, serves as liaison between the teacher and the group, shows enthusiasm, is patient and polite, and helps the group deal with disagreements and conflicts. The teacher may select the group leader or student by maybe asked to select them by election. Work with team leaders to help them deal with problem situations. Some members might rarely talk. One member might dominate the group. Members might call each other names. Some members might refuse to work. One member might want to work alone, and everyone might talk at once. Teacher can get group leaders together and get them to role play such situations and discuss effective strategies for handling the problem situations in the group. Skills for an effective group process. Besides the teachers knowing how to develop a healthy group climate, students also need to know how to function so that they are productive and accomplish their tasks effectively. An effective process will emerge as students exhibit these skills. Individual responsibility and accountability. All group members agree on what needs to be done and by whom. Each student then determines what he or she needs to do and take responsibilities to complete the task or tasks. They can be held accountable for their task and they hold others accountable for theirs. Constructive feedback. Group members are able to give and receive feedback about group ideas. Giving constructive feedback requires focusing on ideas and behaviors instead of individuals being as positive as possible and offering suggestions for improvement. Receiving feedback requires listening well, asking for clarification if the comment is unclear, and being open to change and other ideas. Problem solving. Group members help the group to develop and use strategies central to their group goals. As such, they can facilitate group decision making and deal productively with conflict. In extreme cases, they know when to approach the professor or teacher for additional advice and help. Management and organization. Group members know how to plan and manage a task, how to manage their time, and how to run a meeting. For example, they ensure that meeting goals are set, that an agenda is created and followed, and that everyone has an opportunity to participate. They stay focused on the task and help others to do so too. Knowledge of roles. Group members should know which role can be filled within a group. Example, facilitator, idea generator, summarizer, evaluator, mediator, encourager, recorder, and are aware of which roles they and others are best suited for. They are also willing to rotate roles to maximize their own and other groups' learning experience. Structuring small group interaction. Interaction roles. Groups are cooperative and require each member to participate in different interactions. Bene and Sheets 1948 proposed a classification of roles in three broad categories. First, task roles. Second, group building and maintenance roles. And third, individual roles. Task roles. Task roles deal with a variety of logistics. Communication related to preparation includes such things as guidelines for electronic information retrieval, sharing research, information, visual aid content, and the scheduling of milestone appointments such as draft due dates and rehearsal times. Task role emphasizing organization focus on script development, cohesive language, transition, and consistent graphics. In addition to task roles, group maintenance roles also play a vital role in the group's progress. Relationship within a group must be built and maintained simply because they are composed of individuals with different personalities, work styles, expertise, and availabilities. Selection success hinges on everyone being familiar with leadership styles. Thus, all group members should be aware of three small group leadership styles: highly directive, participatory, and negligent. A highly directive leadership style is where a leader uses an authoritarian method of dealing with group members. The participatory leadership style centers around a designated leader who offers guidance, suggestions, listening, and concern for members while also showing concern for completing the task. Individual roles. Although a group leader is beneficial, each group member has a responsibility for his or her part of all the interactions. Kelly 1992 suggests individuals be skilled followers who engage in two critical activities. They are independent and critical thinkers, and they actively engage in the work rather than waiting to be told what to do. One way to facilitate students' work in small group is to assign students different roles. For example, consider these roles that students can assume in a group. Encourager brings out reluctant students and is a motivator. Gatekeeper equalizes participation of students in the group. Coach helps with academic content. Checker makes sure that the group understands the material. Taskmaster keeps the group on task. Recorder writes down ideas and decisions. Quiet captain monitors the group's noise level. Materials monitor obtains and returns supplies. Strategies for structuring group work. The Cooperative Learning Center at the University of Minnesota makes the following suggestions for structuring group work. Foster positive interdependence. Each group member's effort must be essential to the success of the group. Each member must make unique contribution to the group. Students need to promote one another's success. Group members should support, help and encourage one another. This is easier done face to face than electronically. Accountability must be at both the individual and group level. Although the group must be accountable for reaching its goal, each student in the group must also be held accountable for completing his or her share of work or performing his or her role. One reason many students dislike group work is that they have been left holding the bag. Oftentimes, one or two students in a group will complete most of the work, leaving them feeling resentful of other group members. Of course, in some cases, one or two students have to take over the group, leaving other group members feeling resentful. Establishing both individual and group accountability can alleviate this situation. Teach group social skills. Students who have never worked cooperatively before may not have the requisite skills to do so. For group work to be successful, students need to know how to assume leadership, communicate effectively and resolve conflicts. Require group processing. Groups should discuss how they are processing towards their goals, the problems they are encountering and how decisions are being made. By doing so, they may change the course and become more effective group members. Reports about success and flaws of group work in classroom lead to the conclusion that external structuring of teams and learning tasks is not sufficient because students often need additional structural support on the level of internal organization of group processes and on the internal level of individual learning orientations. Support for internal interactive processes may be achieved by prescribing social roles or even learning by training relevant competencies before small group starts learning together, by reflecting and evaluating group activities during and after learning, and finally by modifying how the learner perceive their own and their teammates' competencies. The optimal approach is to combine these structural support for small group learning and to complement it with phases of teacher-centered as well as individual learning. To summarize this lesson, in this lesson we learned about the strategies in composing a small group are to assign children to heterogeneous groups and to have the group membership reflect diversity in ability, ethnic background, socioeconomic status, gender, etc. Structuring small group work also involves attention to team building skills. A good strategy is to spend several weeks at the beginning of the school year on building team skills, helping students become better listeners and giving them practice in contributing to a team product. Assigning one student in each small group to be a team leader can help to build the team. A group also can benefit when students are assigned different roles that are designed to help the group function more smoothly.